Imagine the blood-stained streets of ancient Rome, a city bustling with the vibrancy of power, politics, and betrayals. But there is one aspect of Roman life that stands out more than any other: the brutal punishments meted out to those who dared to betray the empire. In ancient Rome, betrayal was not just an act of defiance, it was an affront to the very foundations of the Republic and later the empire. Those who chose treason met a fate so terrible that their names have been eternally linked with the most gruesome and torturous deaths in history. This is the story of the tortures that ended the lives of Rome's most feared traitors, men who once walked among the powerful, only to fall to the brutality of the very system they sought to destroy. Gaius Gracchus was a man who once held the hopes of the Roman people in his hands. As a tribune of the plebeians, he challenged the wealthy elite, seeking to redistribute land and bring about much-needed reforms for the common people. His political ambitions made him a hero to the masses, but they also made him an enemy to the powerful Senate, who feared that his influence would disrupt their iron grip on Roman society. Gracchus's radical ideas and his growing popularity threatened the aristocracy, and in 121 BCE, the Senate decided that he had to be stopped. The events that led to his death were swift and ruthless. Gracchus, once the face of reform, found himself hunted by those he once sought to help. As his supporters gathered in the streets, Rome's elite orchestrated his destruction. The soldiers sent to apprehend him did not kill him outright. Instead, they made him suffer for his actions. When Gracchus was captured, his body was subjected to a form of execution that would send shockwaves through Roman society. His face, once the face of hope for the plebeians, was disfigured beyond recognition, his limbs severed, and his body left to be publicly displayed. The mutilation was not just physical, it was psychological. It was a public statement, a reminder to all that in Rome, betrayal was never forgiven, and that no legacy would remain for those who sought to undermine the state. But Gaius Gracchus's execution was not an isolated event. His death was part of a larger pattern that saw other men, once powerful and trusted, meet similar fates. One such man was Marcus Junius Brutus, who, in 44 BCE, was one of the conspirators in the assassination of Julius Caesar. Brutus, who once had the ear of Caesar himself, believed that by killing the emperor, he would restore the Roman Republic and return power to the Senate. But what followed was far from the noble restoration he had envisioned. After Caesar's death, civil war erupted, and Brutus found himself on the losing side. He and his fellow conspirators were defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE, and their fates were sealed. The Roman authorities, eager to make an example of Brutus, subjected him to an execution that was as public as it was brutal. He was captured and bound, paraded through the streets of Rome, and forced to endure a slow and agonizing death. The crowds, once loyal to him, now jeered and spat at him, their disdain for his betrayal palpable in every sneer. His execution was not swift, it was prolonged. A cruel spectacle meant to show all of Rome the consequences of betraying the state. Brutus's final moments were marked by pain and humiliation. He was not allowed the dignity of a quick death. Instead, he was dragged through the streets and tortured. His body was ultimately discarded, a shattered man who had once hoped to change the course of history. His name would forever be associated with the Ides of March and the bloody betrayal of Julius Caesar, but his end was anything but honorable. Another figure whose life ended in torment was Lucius Sergius Catilina, or Catiline, a man who sought to overthrow the Roman Republic through rebellion and violence. In 63 BCE, Catiline's conspiracy to assassinate key senators and seize power was uncovered. The Roman Senate, led by Cicero, acted quickly to crush the rebellion, and Catiline fled the city, only to be hunted down by Roman forces. His capture marked the beginning of his horrific end. Catiline's execution was designed to serve as a warning to all who might entertain the idea of rebellion. His body was subjected to the same brutal treatment that had been meted out to Gracchus and Brutus. Stripped of his dignity, Catiline was bound, dragged through the streets of Rome, and left to die in agony. His body was paraded through the city, and his name was forever associated with treachery. His once ambitious plans to change Rome's political landscape had ended in failure and death. Catiline's tortured body was left to rot in the public square, a grim reminder that in ancient Rome, betrayal would not be tolerated, no matter how powerful the traitor had once been. But perhaps the most horrific execution of all was that of Sejanus, a man who once held the trust of the Emperor Tiberius, but whose ambition led him to plot against the emperor himself. Sejanus, who had risen to power as the Praetorian prefect, sought to remove Tiberius and take the throne for himself. But his plot was uncovered, and in 31 CE, Sejanus was arrested. His execution was so brutal that it became a symbol of the ruthlessness with which the Roman Empire dealt with those who betrayed it. Sejanus's torturous death was drawn out for maximum effect. His genitals were castrated, his eyes gouged out, and his limbs were broken. His body was then hung in a public display of Roman power, his legacy erased. The cruelty of his death sent shockwaves through the empire, serving as a stark warning to anyone who might think of betraying the state. His once lofty position had been reduced to nothing more than a tragic tale of ambition gone wrong. His body was left for all to see, a gruesome spectacle designed to ensure that no one would forget the price of betrayal. These men, Gracchus, Brutus, Catiline, and Sejanus, were not just victims of death, they were victims of a brutal system that showed no mercy to those who betrayed it. Their tortures were not just meant to end their lives, but to erase their legacies, ensuring that their names would be remembered only for their treason and the horrific punishments they endured. In the history of Rome, their stories are a grim reminder that betrayal came with a cost that was paid in blood and suffering. The brutal punishments faced by Rome's greatest traitors were not just about death. They were meant to send a message. The Roman Empire valued loyalty above all else, and those who betrayed it suffered gruesome consequences. Vercingetorix, the Gallic chieftain, led a fierce revolt against Julius Caesar's forces in 52 BCE. But after his defeat at the Battle of Alesia, he was captured and humiliated. Caesar locked him in a cage for years, and when it was time for his execution, it was public and brutal. Vercingetorix was strangled, his body discarded, and his once proud figure reduced to dust. His execution was not just about killing him. It was meant to erase any idea that anyone could challenge Roman might. Lucius Verus, once the co-emperor of Rome, betrayed his brother Marcus Aurelius. His ambition led him to plot against the emperor, and when his treachery was discovered, he was arrested. The Senate condemned him to a public execution, one that was swift and unforgiving. Lucius Verus was flogged, stripped of his dignity, and tortured. His body was displayed for all to see, a reminder that betrayal would not be tolerated. His death was not just personal punishment, but a deterrent for anyone considering treason. Pompey the Great, once a powerful Roman general and member of the First Triumvirate, found himself in conflict with his former ally Julius Caesar. After Pompey's defeat at the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BCE, he fled to Egypt. There, the young king, Ptolemy III, fearing Caesar's wrath, ordered Pompey's assassination. When Pompey arrived in Egypt, he was murdered, and his severed head was presented to Caesar. Pompey, once the pride of Rome, was reduced to nothing more than a trophy, and his body was paraded through the streets as a grim reminder of the consequences of betrayal. Lucius Sergius Catilina, or Catiline, plotted to overthrow the Roman Republic. In 63 BCE, his conspiracy to assassinate key senators and seize power was uncovered. The Senate quickly acted, and Catiline fled the city. But his escape was futile, and he was captured. His execution was just as brutal as the others. Bound and stripped of his dignity, Catiline was dragged through the streets. His body was left to rot in the public square, a fitting end for a man whose name would forever be associated with treason. Sejanus, once a trusted Praetorian prefect under Emperor Tiberius, betrayed his emperor in his pursuit of power. After years of plotting, Sejanus was arrested and condemned to die. His execution was drawn out and cruel. He was castrated, his eyes gouged out, and his limbs broken before being hung in public. His body was displayed as a gruesome spectacle for all of Rome to see. Sejanus' fall from power and the cruelty of his death became a cautionary tale of what would happen to anyone who dared to betray Rome. In the end, these men's tortures were not just about ending their lives. They were meant to erase their legacies. They were punished not just for their actions, but for the fear they inspired. Rome's message was clear. Betrayal would not be tolerated, and no one, no matter how powerful, could escape the empire's wrath. The legacy of these traitors would not be one of honor, but one of suffering and disgrace. Their bodies were mutilated, their names tarnished, and their fates sealed in the most brutal of ways.